And this is the Communicators Online Privacy Series. This is week 4 in our series, and we are pleased to be joined by Representative Cliff Stearns, who is the ranking member on the Commerce Subcommittee on Communications. He and the chairman of the committee, Rick Boucher, have a bill on online privacy that deals with online privacy. And Congressman, if we could start kind of with a philosophical question.
Sure.
So much private information is out there already on the internet. Is it possible to rein that in or to control that, or is the horse way far gone from the barn?
I have to be honest with you. I think the horse is out of the barn. For example, with Google, keeping track of all your search engines requests, and then you combine with a lot of the cookies that are on your computer. In fact, there are cookies that track where you go, how long you stay at a website, where you go from there. All that information you would think would be innocuous, but the problem is when you combine it with an algorithm, which is a computer statistical program, which then brings in gender, ethnicity, brings in perhaps geographical from global positioning, you create a set of information which is, I think for most individuals, if they saw it, they would be concerned. In fact, Capital One, as the credit card company, has come up with 100,000 different, shall we say, profiles of people based upon these algorithms and what they see. So to answer your question, I think it's not too late, but for many of us, we're concerned that it's already out there. And I think we have to step up to the plate here in Congress and pass the Boucher-Stearns bill. When we were in the majority, it was the Stearns-Boucher bill. When I was chairman of the Commerce, Consumer Protection and Trade, and Mr. Boucher from Virginia was very kind enough to come on my bill, and I'm very pleased to be on his bill. So to answer your question, Peter, it's disturbing, particularly when you see, for example, some of what's called flash cookies. These are cookies that Adobe puts on your computer, which has created a lot of lawsuits recently. So I think a lot of us are concerned that the public is unaware, and we need to get the privacy bill into play and let people understand what's happening.
Joining us also again is Juliana Grunwald, who is a Tech Daily Dose editor at the National Journal.
Congressman, privacy has been rolling around the hill for many years. I mean, while Congress has passed bills aimed at particular sectors such as finance or health, they have been unable to pass a comprehensive privacy bill. Why do you think that is?
Well, the basic concept of whether you opt in or opt out is where the defining moment is, because a lot of us, when we use a computer, and particularly with the new iPad, and you put in, for example, your name and you want to Google search, well, Google will go through even blogs to find out if your name is there and send this information on a daily basis to you. So a certain amount of research and search that the computer does for you like, well, that only comes because the cookies are in your computer, and plus they have this algorithm that knows what you want. So the problem becomes if you have personal identifiable information. We've passed law that if it's dealing with medical or financial, it cannot, it has to be protected, and you have to opt in for them to use it. Well, a lot of things today are set up so with this algorithm they can find a lot about you, and it will create personal identifiable information. So the question becomes for Mr. Boucher and I, should we have a customer, when he goes to the computer, he or she has to opt in to do this, or should they just continue to go in and suddenly they get a privacy information policy presented to them, and they say agreed because it's pretty complicated. They don't realize that they are now in agreement, and they really should not be. They probably should be opting out. So this concept of how to make the internet continue to be fluid and transparent at the same time to protect the consumers comes into whether you should opt in or opt out, and whether, for example, if you're a company that is selling this information to another affiliate, should you tell the consumer before he or she starts going into the process. So some of these nuances become very complicated in terms of trying to keep the computer, internet, shall we say, marketable and useful.
But are you sensing more interest from your colleagues on the Hill? I mean, do you sense that there's more interest, that there'll be more attention on this issue than there has been in the past?
I don't sense there's a strong interest on this. I think a lot of consumer groups have concerns just like I have concerns and Mr. Boucher has. But for the most part, I think the standard member is not concerned with this as much as perhaps people like Mr. Boucher and I who perhaps see it from a different light and we have more comprehension of what's happening.
Congressman Stearns, a couple weeks ago in our privacy series, we had on Ann Toth, who is the Director of Privacy for Yahoo, and she was talking about online privacy in your bill. Here's what she had to say.
Oh, good. Okay.
There are a lot of uses where data is used to be able to bill advertisers and to be able to fight fraud across the site in ways that relate directly to the advertising model. So depending on how prescriptive the language is in the bill, it could create problems in some of those really important business operational areas. You know, when you offer an opt-out of showing a consumer behavioral advertising, that same data that you would use to inform the advertising that you're customizing for them may also be used for fraud detection and control. So you want to make sure that you have the appropriate use and right to be able to prevent fraud across your website. If you gave a consumer the option to opt out of data being used for fraud, you'd have a lot of opt-outs from consumers who are likely to engage in fraud. So I think there are some protections there that we're really just looking at very carefully and making sure that they're drafted in a way that protects those really necessary uses of data.
Congressman Stearns, what's your reaction to Yahoo?
Well, I think she's described the problem, and I think she did a very good job in terms of there's opt-in and opt-out. In many cases, Yahoo, whether it's providing news for you or whether they're selling you items, they want to be able to take the information and sell it to an affiliate so that that affiliate will give them advertising, and they in turn can help me buy a piece of clothing or some electronic equipment because they know that I'm interested. So that's good. And I think what she's saying is, in that case, you don't want to have it labor intensive where every time you go, you have a box shows up that says, do you want to opt in or opt out of this? So what she's saying is allow people like Yahoo and Google and others to have this transparency so they can go in. And maybe a solution would be is that the consumer could see a good housekeeping seal that would be created like eTrust, which is a company that does this. And then the consumer could feel confident that they don't have to go through this opt-in and can continue to use Yahoo or Google or anybody because they have the trust that these people are complying with a generally accepted Federal Trade Commission good housekeeping seal.
Your bill, some privacy advocates argue that that consumers should have the right to opt out of being tracked on the web at all, of having their internet activities tracked for advertising purposes. Where do you stand on that idea, the idea of a do not track list?
Well, I think that might be a little strong because to a certain aspect about this is you want the, shall we say, the software to tell you, in a sense, what your predilections are, what you like and what you don't like. Now, when this is all brought together in a statistical model, it gets a little dangerous, but the initial application, I think, is good. If I'm interested in golf or I'm interested in ESPN, and ESPN is, I go to Drudge and I get an ad from ESPN about something I'm interested in or golf, I think that's good. So I think in a larger sense, we've got to be careful. And we've done this because I think we're one of the few countries that have not an overly regulated privacy like the European Union does. And in that respect, I think do no harm is worked. But I think this whole idea of these mathematicians coming up with these algorithms that are now taking what appears to be spurious information and bringing it together with global positioning and all that, that I think is what probably we've got to be concerned about.
But shouldn't the idea of choice and transparency also include the choice to not be tracked at all?
I think if a person has that strict, they can go to their computer now under their preferences and prevent any cookies from coming in, or certainly erase all the cookies. And then they can start fresh and say, okay, from then on, I don't want to have any cookies. And so Adobe comes up or some other program, you can have to go and you can opt out. But I don't think consumers are going to be that knowledgeable or interested because they're just, it's like anything else. You turn on the TV and away you go. You turn on the internet and away you go, and you start clicking. And so unless something, a pop-up logo comes on and tells you that this is a concern. And I think that's what the vouchers bill is trying to define, those areas where the consumer should be concerned. A box comes up and says, you are now entering an area where they're selling your information to affiliates. This is what's going to be done, and you have to opt in or it won't occur. Or in this case, if you're already there, you could opt out. But I think what Mr. Bouch is trying to do with this bill, and I concur, is to try and find those very shaded, nuanced areas where the consumer is unaware and he or she should be aware and should be part of the program and told about it.
Congressman Stearns, as Juliana Grunwald pointed out, this online privacy discussion has been going on for years on Capitol Hill, and it just hasn't gained any traction. And now with this Congress ending, and the next one starting in January, do you foresee this issue coming back up, whether it's Boucher Stearns or Stearns Boucher as the bill? Do you see it getting some traction in the next Congress?
I do. I think Mr. Bouch has done a lot of work here. He's met with lots of groups. He's put his bill out for a comment period for, I think, at least 3 or 4 months. We've accumulated all this information. When I was in the majority, I had 7 hearings on privacy and discussed some of the constitutional issues here. So I think we're at almost a point where we can, in the new Congress, we could probably drop it and mark it up in the subcommittee and probably get it through the full committee. And I think, to a certain extent, members have to understand that every day we prevent a bill from happening is another day that this horse is out of the barn and people are creating more of a profile on people that they're not even aware of.